Prayer continues to live even after death. How many times have you let slip a chance to perform an extra prayer? Perhaps you woke 10 minutes before Fajr, yet chose to sleep rather than rise for a brief Tahajjud. Perhaps you had a few spare minutes before leaving for work, but decided the 2 rakahs of duha were not worth the effort. Perhaps you routinely forego the Sunnah after the obligatory prayers, even when there was no real urgency to rush away. In this worldly life, extra prayer often falls to the bottom of our list of priorities. It will be done only when nothing else occupies us. Yet in the intermediate realm after death, the Barzakh, it becomes the most precious provision one could have. If the people in the grave could speak, what would they tell us? The answer is not vague. Tradition gives us a clear and specific report. Once the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, passed by a grave and asked the companions who the occupant was. They named the deceased, and the messenger said of him that 2 rakahs were more beloved to that man than everything that remained of your worldly life. In another narration, he described them as 2 light rakahs, simple units that you dismiss as insignificant, yet those very units, if this person had performed them, would have been dearer to him than all the remainder of your worldly possessions. This emphasis on the light rakahs underscores that the Prophet was not praising only the long, arduous vigils of the night. He referred to brief, sincere units of prayer that take only minutes. Think of the 2 short rakahs before Fajr. The Sunnah of the Prophet was so brief that the companions said it seemed he was merely reciting al-Fatiha in each rakah. Still, the Prophet said that those 2 rakahs are better than the world and everything in it. He treated such voluntary acts as though they were rare opportunities to be seized. Imam al-Muzanī, may Allah have mercy on him, advised a practical mindset. Before every prayer, say to yourself, perhaps I will never pray another prayer in my life. That imagination is meant to make our worship more sincere and urgent. Consider the people who pray under the most severe conditions. Think of those in Gaza who pray between bombardments, not knowing whether they will live to see the next prescribed time. Picture their humility and concentration. When in a tent or shelter, all that remains for them is turning to their Lord. If you understand the nature of prayer, even when you possess everything, the heart still craves the quiet of worship. Recall the Prophet's plea to Bilal, "Comfort us with the prayer, O Bilal." What if that comfort extends into the grave? Scholars say that prayer was dearer to the Prophet than even his food and drink. Although the prophets and messengers are not required to pray in the Barzakh, the messenger describes seeing Musa, peace be upon him, standing and praying in his grave during the Isra and Miraj. The scholars explain that these posthumous prayers for some of the righteous are not means to increase their record, because one cannot add to deeds after death. Rather, such prayers are among the special allowances and comforts Allah grants to certain pious servants. For instance, Thabit al-Bunani was seen in a dream praying in his grave, and it was mentioned that he used to supplicate for the ability to pray after death. Some of the pious ask for this blessing, not from a desire to accumulate deeds, but because such continued worship is a form of nearness and solace. When a believing person is set up in the grave, he will see the sun as if it is about to set. The first thought of the disoriented believer will be, "Let me pray." Before he fully notices who is appearing before him, the 2 creatures who will question him, his immediate concern is the prayer. The angels then come to ask the questions, but the believer's overwhelming plea is simply, "Let me not miss the prayer." Even when he learns he did not neglect the obligatory prayers, he will still wish he had offered more in this life, particularly the voluntary prayers of the night. The longing for an extra 2 rakahs is repeatedly reported in the dreams of the pious. When asked what they would do if given another chance after death, many of the righteous replied, "I wish to pray 2 rakahs. One of the Salaf recounted seeing Salima ibn Kuhail in a dream and asking him which deeds proved most beneficial. The reply was direct, "Nothing availed me more in this life than my standing in night prayer." When Musa al-Hamdani passed away, a relative saw him in a dream and noticed his forehead shining like a bright star. On asking what that light was, he answered that it was the light of the dust of his prostrations on earth. When asked about his state in the next life, he said he was in the best of conditions, a garden in which they never die nor are forced to leave. These accounts emphasize that the dust of Sadda, the marks of prostration, and the habit of night devotion leave a lasting luminous benefit. As you ponder groups of believers crowding the houses of Allah, especially in the last 10 nights, consider the story of Kathir ibn Murrah. In a dream, he reached an upper level of paradise and saw a group of women in a mosque. When he asked how they attained that place, they answered that it was through their prostrations and their takbirat, through their sajdas and declarations of Allah's greatness. Thus, many of the things the dead most cherish are the moments when they had their foreheads on the ground in the depths of night. The Prophet also taught a striking image. The place on the forehead that touches the earth in prostration will not be consumed by the fire. Just as the Quran can be described as a shield from burning in some traditions, so the mark of sajda is a seal of humility and a gateway for the soul's ascent. The closest a servant draws to Allah is in prostration. The most complete act of heart connection is the prayer. Trials can also be the means by which Allah draws a person nearer. Hardship often strips away distractions and forces the heart to seek its true refuge in Lordship. When people have nothing else, prayer becomes their consolation and the source of an unshakable tranquility that worldly abundance cannot furnish. Consider how the one in a refugee tent finds khushu, deep presence, while the comfortable may fail to reach that state despite having more resources. Prayer's value is not diminished by poverty. Indeed, poverty can make its worth more evident. If you reflect on the accounts of the pious, you will see a recurring theme. The simplest acts of sincere devotion often become the believer's most cherished gains in the hereafter. The two light rakahs the Prophet mentioned are a vivid reminder that what we consider small may be monumental in the eternal economy. We often dismiss short voluntary units as insignificant when they can be the tipping point of mercy for a soul. Two brief rakahs, done with humility and presence, therefore do not relegate voluntary prayer to the category of "I'll do it if I have time." Value the quick sunnahs, the modest units before Fajr, the rakahs after the obligatory prayers, the short duha units, and the moments at night when you can whisper to Allah. These are not trivial intervals, lost to the day. They are time invested in what will remain. The habit of frequent prostration produces light and stations for the believer in the beyond, and the early generations' dreams and reports demonstrate this spiritual reality. The Prophet's encouragement to cherish these minutes was practical counsel. He turned our attention to the spiritual return on small acts. Make immediate, practical adjustments. Treat short sunnahs as non-negotiable appointments with enduring consequence rather than optional extras. Cultivate the brief nighttime wakefulness that allows for a few heartfelt words to Allah before sleep. Reduce the number of excuses you use to dismiss a couple of rakahs. Develop a mental reminder before every prayer that this could be your last, not to terrify yourself but to awaken gratitude and presence. Let the example of those who worship under siege and intense remind you that depth of devotion does not depend on comfort but on readiness to place the forehead to the earth. Two brief units, performed consistently and with sincerity, create a chain of benefit that reaches beyond this life. The mark of prostration is a symbol of humility and a sign that the soul sought nearness to its Lord. Small acts done with presence add up to great worth in the eternal reckoning. Make concrete, achievable goals for voluntary prayers this week and build them steadily. Encourage family and remind one another gently, for communal support sustains individual resolve. Inshallah, be consistent.